South Africa's largest teachers' union, SADTU, is calling on government to close all schools until after the COVID-19 pandemic peaks. This follows a special meeting of the union's National Executive Committee, which assessed the surge in reported cases at schools. Grades have slowly been phased in over the past few months, despite rocketing infections in South Africa. Well, let's get more on this. We're joined by SADTU's head of secretariat, Xolani Fakude, and the basic education spokesperson, Mhlanga. Gentlemen, good evening, and thank you both for your time tonight. Let me perhaps begin with you, Xolani. What are some of the factors that are contributing to your decision for behind the call for schools to be shut?
Well, thank you, Cathy. Firstly, let me greet you, let me greet the viewers as well. Let me also greet my colleague, Elijah. What SADTU is saying is that we have made certain observations, and those observations come to one conclusion, Cathy. The conclusion is that effective learning and teaching is not currently happening in our schools. And we're saying that it cannot happen when parents are anxious, teachers are anxious, learners are anxious. So we are saying that the system currently, as it is not necessarily coping with these new conditions that we are dealing with. So SADTU is therefore saying that since the experts, the epidemiologists are telling us that we are only going to reach the peak of this particular pandemic later on, sometime between August and September, we are therefore saying that let us take this opportunity during the peak of this particular pandemic to actually press the reset button. And by doing that, we are saying that let us allow the system, both the health system and the education system, to develop the necessary resilience and learn about the necessary strategies that need to be implemented. And once we are over the peak, once we are over the worst, only then can we start considering the reopening of the schools. What we're also saying, Kate, and we need to make this categorically clear, is that yes, we are concerned. We do know about the negative impact that the closing of schools does have. But we are saying that our lives matter, the lives of teachers matter, those of learners do matter, and indeed those of the parents do matter as well. That is SADTU's position.
Elijah, will you be supporting this bid by SADTU as the Basic Education Department?
We will be listening to SADTU. The minister will meet the leadership of SADTU tomorrow morning to engage on the matters that SADTU are raising. As you correctly said, that SADTU NEC met today, and immediately after their meeting, they held a media briefing. So we haven't really had an opportunity to engage on the matters that they made public today via the media briefing. So that engagement tomorrow will be helpful in that regard.
Are you surprised by what they're saying? Because there's been so much communication between yourselves, SADTU, and various other stakeholders within the education space. And many of the issues that they've raised in their report following the meeting are things that they've been talking about consistently. And I imagine these are issues that you're well aware of.
Yeah, we are aware. But the extent of the issues, that's another matter, to the effect that you could make a decision like this one. Say schools must close. I mean, SADTU has been one organization to say that let's go back to school. But we also agree that we'll be monitoring to see what is happening on the ground. I mean, it's been about 5 weeks now since schools reopened. Whether we've given schools enough time to settle down, that's another question that we also need to focus on. But we are here now. The call has been made for close down. What we need to do is to interrogate that particular call and look at its implications. But remember, a huge investment has also been made to get schools ready for the phased reopening. So now if you say close, what would that mean? So that's exactly what will form part of the discussions tomorrow.
Let me bring Xolani back into the conversation. Xolani, when it comes to the school curriculum, do you think that it's time that the Basic Education Department call the year and simply say, we've tried all we could, but the reality is that they're not going to finish the current school year in 2020?
Well, Cathy, firstly, I need to also clarify what the spokesperson of the DBE is saying, that SADTU was one of the organizations that actually called for the reopening of the schools initially. That is very, very far from the truth, because the prerogative to open or close schools lies with the Minister of Basic Education and the Cabinet, not an education workers' union. What SADTU did rather is that we said that in the inevitability and the eventuality that schools do open under the conditions, these are the 14 minimum conditions that we will hold the Department of Basic Education accountable to. And that is what we thought we must just clarify very, very quickly. And then the other issue, Cathy, is that in terms of the curriculum, SADTU believes that we need to be flexible. We are saying that we are not married as a society to the idea that the schooling year must always start from January to November towards December, because we're dealing with a very, very new condition here. We are calling for flexibility. We're also calling for other interventions. We are saying that there is nothing that is stopping us from considering extending the particular academic year in terms of curriculum coverage to the next academic year. We have seen other countries, even in Africa, for instance, like Kenya, have already declared that exams will only sit in February 2021. And we are saying as a union, Cathy, we do not understand. And we are saying that the current interventions currently are actually defying logic, because you cannot open up or increase the phasing in of rating schools when we are still dealing with the peak of the pandemic. And that is a status position.
Do you feel that the department was able to meet your criteria in terms of the basic conditions for your staff or your members returning back to schools?
Well, we believe that not all the conditions have actually been met. Not all our demands have been met as we had expected. I want to give one critical example, and I'm glad that Elijah is here with us. We are saying that, for instance, the minister made a commitment that there would be psychosocial support services, because we are dealing with a very, very new condition here. Teachers are anxious, learners are anxious, and yet we have seen that not necessarily happening. It is less than effective in terms of implementation. We have seen another alarming case for that matter. The standard operating procedures that have been published are actually being implemented quite haphazardly at the level of the schools, which means that there is a level of a huge gap of communication between district officials, between departmental officials, and the school managers, who are now expressing a lot of frustration. You get, in some instances, schools being closed for 2 days, in some instances for 3 days, in some instances for 14 days. That is because the very SOP is not necessarily being implemented uniformly as we're hoping to happen. So we're saying that progress has been made in terms of covering some of the 14 areas that we raised, but there are still some very, very glaring and very, very critical areas that still need to be attended to.
Elijah, how do you explain this? How do you explain the fact that schools have also not been coming to the party, and therefore not only do teachers feel that they are at more risk, but of course you also have learners who are open to that risk, and subsequently the families of those learners?
No, we are all at risk. We have also seen media houses closing down and also moving their people
Elijah,
to
that's not the point. Of course everybody is at risk. It's a global pandemic. The issue I'm raising specifically with you is in terms of the criteria, the basic working conditions that SADTU had raised before going back to work. He's saying there's been a haphazard implementation of even some of the measures that the Basic Education Department itself has put in place. So I'm asking you, why has there been this deficiency?
I was starting to answer that question before you interrupted me, to say that the virus is everywhere and we all need to do all that we can to stop the virus from spreading. And how you do that is to adhere to the safety regulations that have been put in place in terms of washing hands, keeping social distancing, as well as sanitizing and keeping your mask on. That's what has been done in schools, in the majority of the schools. That is taking place. We picked up the inconsistencies in the implementation of that standard operating procedure, and we even communicated with school. Say, please go back to your COVID file, which you have in a school, the same file which was used for orientation training before learners return to school, and make sure that you familiarize yourself with it. And in case there's a suspected matter of COVID-19 infection or exposure, make sure that you follow the steps that are there. But the challenge that we picked up is in regard to communication, where there's a lot of secrecy, where some school principals or some teachers are not disclosing people who might be infected. As a result of that, there is anxiety and panic, because if people do not know that they have the virus or they might have been exposed, they don't know what to do. We have said that to close a school is not a decision of the school itself, but the health professional who would have been called to the school to respond to the matter. So that's what we are talking about. Matters have even been discussed between education as well as health. to appeal for a uniform application of the standard operating procedure. So it's there. What needs to happen now is the application of this so that we continue to put safety as a top priority in everything that we are doing within school premises and outside.
So in the absence of it, what Sadtu is saying is correct, that some of their teachers and subsequently the learners are being exposed to a greater risk.
Everyone is exposed because remember, when schools had opened, we got cases that indicated that some of our teachers were already infected. That was even before schools had opened. So the risk is everywhere for learners on their way to school. In school, when they arrive, we insist that they need to be checked for their temperature. They must be checked if they are wearing their mask, and they will be isolated if they are suspected that their temperature is abnormal. But there will also be the management of their movement within school premises to make sure that they keep physical distancing. And when we have had enough time to allow the schooling system to settle down, understand, apply all the measures that have been put in place, that's another matter. That's why we are saying the NC will be critical in threshing out all these issues.
What's at stake when it comes to cancelling the 2020 academic year? What would really be lost, Elijah?
We don't want to lose lives at the expense. I mean, we don't want to lose lives because we want to push the academic calendar. We never said that. In every media briefing or every statement or every speech that the minister has made, she has insisted that we are not doing everything to save the academic year, but we are putting safety first. That's why we even went so far as to say that schools that are not ready should not open. We said that those schools that have met all the requirements for safety should reopen. We said that for that reason. And we even said that schools that are in areas that are hotspots should reconsider and adjust their planning accordingly. So that's where we are. We are not insisting that the academic year must be finished. I mean, even with the curriculum, it has been trimmed. It has been revised so that it meets the current demands brought on us by the coronavirus.
All right. Xolani, let me wrap up with you. What kind of posture will you be taking into tomorrow's meeting with the Minister of Basic Education?
Well, that is going to be clear, Cathy. That is going to be clear that the lives of our learners and the lives of our teachers are absolutely sacrosanct. And we are going to insist on the fact that we cannot under any circumstances be under the impression that the academic year must be completed by hook or crook. We are saying that these are people's lives. Earlier today, when we started with the NEC, we read condolences of educators close to the number 250 or so that have already lost the battle to COVID. So we're saying that these are people's lives, and let us work together. Elijah is correct in that we need to continuously engage as stakeholders. And we are going to be clear as well to the minister tomorrow that we are saying that the lives of our members, the lives of our learners are absolutely important, and that we cannot just be obsessed about saving in course an academic year at the expense of our lives.
Sadtu's head of secretariat, Xolani Fakude, and basic education spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga. Let me thank you both for your time on News at Prime tonight.